Welcome to another episode of Enabling Tomorrow. My name is Tim Metz. I'm your host for today, and we're going to be talking to Bukola Akingbade. She's the CEO and founder of Kucheza Gaming, which is an esports company in Lagos, Nigeria. And we'll talk about her career in advertising and how that led her to start this company. She lives in Lagos, Nigeria, where the company is also based, but previously she has also lived in the UK. Other things we'll be talking about are how esports relate to education and how gaming can actually be a very valuable educational tool. We'll also hear about Kucheza's plans for launching and developing their own game and the other exciting plans Bukola has for Kucheza. And we'll also hear her really exciting story about how and why she started the first digital advertising agency in Nigeria. If you like these episodes, before we get started, remember you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll be notified of new episodes. And you can, of course, also follow us on social media. So with that, let's get started and let's go to the interview with Bukola. As I was thinking about how we got to this interview, and then I realized that Vic introduced you, right? Vic Bassi, and he's a games journalist. And I realized because I made a very good remark in our first episode, which was with Vic, because I said, "Oh, what do you see for the future of gaming in Africa? Do you imagine that there will be something like esports?" And then Vic said, "It is already there." So that was very very naive of me, but so that's maybe one of the reasons why we are talking now. So yeah, I'm really interested to hear. How what's that like esports in Africa, and how did you get to found that actually and get that idea?
Okay, I think that's a good point. So, esports, it's fairly. I'll say I'm new to esports, somewhat speaking, but I'll take it from a personal angle. So, I'm married. I've got three kids. One is 14, second is 11, the third is 8. And so I've kind of watched how they've changed. You know, when the 14-year-old was 7 or 8, how he behaved was quite different. You know, he would play games. Then the second, I found out they was watching people play games on YouTube. I was a big Minecraft fan, and you kind of just watch people play Minecraft, and it's like I couldn't understand it. And my background is marketing, so I'm very curious about data, curious about behavior, just trying to understand. So what's going on here? I get the concept of playing games. You know, my first console was Commodore 64. When I was growing up, that kind of dates me a bit. But got into the Nintendo series and all that coming through. So I did play a lot of games growing up, but I couldn't understand the concept of watching people play games on YouTube. And sometimes they didn't even have the games they were watching. They were just kind of watching. So I got really, really curious. So on the advertising side, we have a global partnership with a company called Advertising Week, which is run by Stillwell partners across the world, New York, Europe, and stuff like that. And we're doing the Africa leg for that. So anytime we went for any of the conferences, I would kind of huddle up to the esports forums and listened to a lot of people, read a lot of data. It took me about 18 to 24 months to kind of figure out where to play. But the concept of it being $150 billion industry, the games industry, and the esports one being about $1 billion or something like that is massive. I'm filling out stadiums and all that. However, it's a very infrastructure-driven economy, and it's very PC based. And in Africa, I'm sure you know this, the infrastructure is not as developed in a lot of the countries to compete at this level. And
when you say infrastructure, do you mean like internet connectivity, or people having the hardware, or both?
It's both. It's connectivity. It's the cost of the PCs. The fact that servers aren't in Africa for the big games. So it's everything that doesn't allow us to compete at that level. But the beautiful thing over the last few years has been the emergence of mobile esports. So so Africa is quite similar to Asia to the extent that because we're a mobile first continent. So the fact that mobile esports is now becoming a thing makes it quite a lot. It levels a bit the playing field, not completely, but at least it gives us access to be able to compete in that space. So in kind of looking at the data and looking at the research, the reality is, look, for us to find value in the global value chain, from an African perspective, we're a young continent, really young continent, median age about 19. We're set to double in size. Nigeria, for instance, is going to double in size by 2050 to 400 million from 203 million. That should be scary for anybody across the world.
Yeah.
The whole continent by 2050 will have just under 1 billion people under 24, right?
Wow.
And this pace, pace of growth, population-wise, is not seen in the same kind of developmental growth for infrastructure or even technological growth. And there are a lot of pockets of things starting to go on in tech, so that's also quite positive. But even the way the education system evolves or how the kids learn is not evolving as quickly. So for us, having looked into all the data, it was critical because we then started kind of understanding that esports and gaming also have educational value, it has economic viability, all those kind of elements. So for us, eventually we got to the point where we said to play in esports in Nigeria on the continent for us as a company, it would need to be primary and secondary schools. That will be our space, because we can at that point kind of use esports because a lot of kids love it to recruit. For instance, in Nigeria, you have quite a few million children. I think figures about just over 10 million or so out of school children. That's ridiculous. And so one of the things esports from data helps to do is to get kids attending school more. And so it's using that desire for kids to play and channeling that, right? So, getting them in school, getting them working together, getting them collaborating. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
But then how should it, because when I hear esports, maybe I'm going to say something very naive again, but when I hear esports, I think a bit about, some kids who are playing video games very seriously, professionally, we hear sometimes, and they're making like millions of dollars and they're playing in these tournaments. So that kind of competition tournament element, that's what I think about when I hear esports, right? But so then how does it translate to what you're doing with your company? Like, which part of that are you doing with your company, and how does that then relate to education? Because that's not the first thought I would have when I hear esports. I don't think about education.
And you're right. So esports is competitive gameplay. That's what it is. So in schools, we run a school league system. And so you run tournaments. But the beautiful thing about the format that we run, and we have a partnership with, there's a UK trade body called Yuki. So we have a partnership with Digital Schoolhouse, the UK partner. It's a games industry partner that works with schools and with the games industry. Now, in schools, we run the tournaments, but the format is that you have, so let's say we ran Smash Bros a few months ago as a tournament across a few schools. And so what that allows us to do, apart from the kids that want to play, as players, the other side is also in the school, you get to get the shoutcaster who kind of bigs up their team as part of this process. You kind of have the team manager, you have the person who does the production to try to get their streams up, and what you start to see, or the team photographer, what you start to see is, even if there's a lot of inclusion involved, but also the player is the player, or the players are the players, but you also have the support of a few other people who either love to watch or want to contribute by doing something else, more administrative or more creative, and we kind of run that. And then there's a league system, and then you then have the finals at a physical location, which is what we did for Smash, and the kids play. But what you learn through the process is, because they have to strategize, right? Working in teams, subbing out, knowing what characters to use. There's a lot of, camaraderie, a lot of sportsmanship learning. You can imagine it's kind of being a competitive football player in school, right? Yeah. So you would go to other schools to play, right? Only now we're playing video games.
And then it's, so I should picture that they are indeed like sitting in, I don't know, the main area of the school, and some others are cheering them on. Is it like that? Or they play through the internet, or like, so they physically are in the same location when they're playing?
So yes, in the ones that we've run before COVID, now a lot of that is changing. But yes, so we use the school auditorium, which is, like a lot of them are quite nice. Gallery seating, and where they use for the General Assembly. And so they are cheering them on, and they're supporting and all that. So that, and weirdly, because when we started, there's a cultural mindset here. I'll speak first from the parents' perspective. So personally, like when about 25 years ago, when I wanted to get into uni, I actually wanted to study computer science. And 25 years ago, you know, because of the fast change of technology, we might not really kind of remember what it was like then. So I told my dad I wanted to study computer science. I was like, computer science? No, you can't study computer science. No, that what is computer science and all this? He knew exactly what it was. It's just, you know, kind of saying the traditional career paths.
Yeah.
Right. So my dad was an engineer, his brother an architect. So he just said, oh, you do technical drawing quite well. You love numeracy, study architecture. Of course, fast forward, I loved studying architecture. Yeah. I didn't practice for a day, but I loved studying it anyway. But the point I'm making is the traditional roles that parents have that their kids should participate in. So imagine how careers of the future have changed, right? And here, if you do tell your parents, oh, I want to be, even if you say I want to be an artist, you know, it's still largely frowned upon because they don't necessarily, first there might be no ecosystem, so invalid in terms of your parents wanting the best for you, but it's seen as, you know, they want to put you in something that is tried and tested, you know, they can say, you know, your future is fine, you know, be an accountant, be a lawyer, you know, be an engineer, you know, be an architect. So, and that is one of the barriers we have anyway. So when you're talking to parents about their kids playing esports competitively, you can imagine what that's going to be like. Even for fun, even if you're talking about competitively, it's even for fun playing with friends. It's also a challenge because they feel it might interfere with the school, you know, because and for us, education.
Like people say our games are bad and it has violence or things like that. So yeah, there's a stigma also that's connected to it, I guess.
Yeah. So for parents to try to educate parents that, look, first, like anything, as a parent, your parent guard still needs to be on. You know, if your child is 7, don't let them play 12 plus games, as an example. You know, but what we realize is there's a lot of education involved, parental education, for them to understand the whole.
So how do you do that?
Space.
Do you have materials for that, or how do you convince them, or you bring them to an event and they see it, or what works in convincing them?
So the first thing we did was we launched at an education fair. And the education fair it's roughly just over 7,000 people that come through about three days, and it's schools, it's parents, and it's kids, right? So we were on two sides of the fair. So we're kind of like on the expo side, where you kind of have the full esports experience, where the kids were just straying. They're like we couldn't get them to go anywhere else. They were there. Then we had the thought leadership side, and so because we used the expo side to kind of get parents to see, they know their kids play games. So anyway, to get the kids there, so the parents automatically kind of come, and then, you know, schools are like, what's happening here? And from discussing and kind of sharing materials with them, and you're right, there are a lot of studies, especially if you looked at esports as sports and just that competitiveness of being in a team. In your school environment, that alone helps with discipline. That alone helps with critical thinking, strategy. That alone helps with, you know, a sense of responsibility, self-direction. You know, so, and from the materials we have, so there's some research done by our partners. It was done by University of Staffordshire, in terms of the impact their own esports program has had in terms of attendance, but also the ability or the choice of students to be more interested in STEM courses at GCSE level. So there's a lot of that as well. So from that, but what we realized is from talking to the parents, though initially they were like, oh, I don't want my kids doing this. Oh, but I know that they play. So that's the first thing. I know my kids play games. I just think it's a waste of time. So that's the mindset. So the challenge is, oh yes, they play games, but well, it's not necessarily a waste of time. However, you know, you should know this, that, and the other about what your kids are playing. And in some instances, what we found is also the parents also want to bond in that space with their kids. So we have situations where, you know, parents, and I've done it as a parent as well, I moved from being restrictive to regulating to then enrichment, where before I just say, no, you can't do that. So, oh, actually, you can do that between this time. Then now it's, oh, what exactly are you doing? Oh, I know what it is. And you just see their eyes light up, you know, and try to explain to you, oh, mom, in Minecraft, I've just built this thing, I'm crafting, and this is what this means, and that. And then you find out that you then start having new connection moments with your kids. And I think a lot of that, so from the fair, it was a lot of that the parents expressed. And through the tournament, especially the moms, actually, it's weird because, maybe not weird, but it's the moms a lot of times that bring the kids for the tournaments.
Yeah.
And so we have the opportunity to interact with them. And over time, we've seen that the moms are actually quite open. The more information they have, they're quite open. They just want their kids to try different things. An example, one of our winners, though the mom brought him to play and he won and he was supposed to fly to London to compete against the winners of our partners school in the UK. The mom was like, "Oh, I'm so glad he won. I'm so excited. I'm not sure his dad will let him go though." It's like, what do you mean his dad is not going to let him go? So no, his dad doesn't like this kind of stuff. And so we had to go through the process of convincing. So it's we're learning as well, but there's a lot of education. Part of us we're also trying to introduce from an education perspective, are just kind of like this digital content as well that we want to start creating with partners, kind of showcasing the ecosystem or the path that is possible, because we found out that the reason why parents guide their children to other things is because they think their future will be secure. And that's what a parent needs to do. So we need to justify, one, the educational value of gaming, and two, the economic viability. And those two are things that are the pillars that we build all information around education to parents on.
Because what happens when somebody wins? What do they get, or where do they go from there?
So again, tying back to education. So when they win, the prize money is strictly scholarships. It goes back to schools. Now, check this. The kids advocate that that's not the right way to do it, because they're like, "But I won." Yeah, but your parents pay your school fees.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, but they're like, no, but then you're giving my parents money, but I won.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's all this. So we've come to a place now where 95% of the money goes to scholarships and 5%, kind of goes to them buying V-Bucks and stuff like that. So that's on the one hand. The second thing is also the internships with our partners. So part of what COVID didn't let us do this, actually, we're supposed to go play the tournament. Then we had visits to two game studios. So we had a visit planned for Epic Studios, and we had another one planned, I think was with Sega. And so the kids were supposed to go in and spend the day there with their parents, because we advised their parents to come as well, so they can see the full studio, see the artists, the sound, the animators, and just kind of get a feel of what this world is like, because kids are really curious. They're really, really creative. And if you can get them active about what they want to be in future, not very passive. Because I remember when I was dropping courses, like, when you're going from, it's in middle school to high school, I think. I don't know what is this in your system, but you get to choose the courses that you want to keep.
Yeah.
Now here, a lot of that selection isn't very kind of, oh, this is what I want to do in my future, therefore these are the courses I'm going to drop. Sometimes my friend is not in that class, right? And you kind of drop your, So, but if you can get
anyway, how old are you when you need to make that choice? I don't know. I remember I was 14.
Exactly, about 13 or exactly 13
Yeah.
or 14, exactly. What do you know? And so it's that if the esports and games can get them curious enough to be, if I want to do that, what do I need to do? And that's what the data is showing us, that the ability to be active in choosing what subjects they keep, which ultimately means they'll remain in STEM and STEAM, which ultimately means, a country like Nigeria can start to have a bit more kids who choose to go into computing or related courses like that, right? And art and design and all those kind of things. So that's how we're seeing it. And that's what the winners, were meant to have. So it's the internship with the studios. It's the scholarships from winning. It's also the exposure of themselves and their parents as well. So that's what we're trying to cover.
Okay, that's really nice. And is it now, because you mentioned earlier, like also the influence of mobile phone? Because if you think about like hardcore gaming that I can think of, it's like you need actually pretty expensive computers to be able to run the graphics and all those kind of things. So is the kind of games you're running, is it all on mobile, and does that make it like really accessible for kids from all kinds of income levels, or is it something that's more for middle class, or how do you include everybody? Is that possible?
So it is possible. So the platform democratizer is definitely mobile. The challenge with mobile esports at this point is that there's not enough variety. However, the big kids game, so if I pick Fortnite as an example, is cross-platform, including mobile. The mobile experience is actually pretty good. So Fortnite is a very good title. The Smash Bros isn't mobile, but we used the offline mode for the tournament, so which allowed us to be able to kind of get, because that was also registration based, so we could get the actual students in the space playing. But mobile is where we need that. That is what our plans are. The like something like Rocket League, which is an amazing esports title for kids, there's no mobile side to it. So for us, it wouldn't be a title we'll be able to adopt here. There are other things that we're working to try to get. FIFA is football. Well, FIFA is football. And football is absolutely big here. And whilst it's one of those, and it's a 3+ game, so it's one of the things we will introduce. But I don't think it has it stretches the whole creativity leg that Fortnite does, because Fortnite does the battle royale, the gameplay, and also the creative side, based on the fact that Epic has the Unreal Engine kind of built into that whole experience. But yeah, mobile is definitely where we're trying to focus. There's a few companies coming out with big mobile games now. One of the big titles on the continent this isn't a title we use for ourselves because it's a 16+ game, but I'm just using it as an example to kind of show the growth on the continent. So PUBG Mobile, which is it's very big in Africa now, and Call of Duty Mobile, and both have released light versions of the game. I think both have released the light versions, which also speaks to the point of infrastructure. Right. That because though they have the mobile games that are full and they're nice, they had to create a light version. So which still goes back to the point of infrastructure. But the way we can be competitive on the continent is by it's by going through mobile. The other thing in the whole esports and games ecosystem for us that we are also quite passionate about and trying to ensure that we entrench is the idea of telling authentic African stories, not to kind of not to restrict them to Africa, but recently we licensed the IP of an existing book called The Wild Kingdoms. So it's based on Yoruba mythology, and which is really beautiful. It's kind of like Greek mythology or anything like that, but it has its own uniqueness. And so we're building that into a mobile game. It's one of the things we've moved closer since COVID. And so for us, being able to work on a project like that, where we're talking about culture preservation, and we're still talking about competitive gameplay because it will be an esports title, but it's being able to represent elements of us in whilst it's mobile, the experience might not be fully immersive, but it's one of the things we want to start to kind of do to also help the kids learn and play things that, this is my culture. Like my son, when I talk to him about culture, it's like, what's that? But when I spoke to him about this game idea, I was like, this makes absolute sense. I would actually play this game. And I'm like, I get this, I'll learn something. And the point of gaming as a learning tool, not because it's an educational game, but it's an amazing game that, you learn through the process. Maybe something like Assassin's Creed, where you kind of learn about Egypt, going through that game, not because that is the focus of the game, but it kind of helps you through that process. It's another way that, we think that gaming can help educate not just Africans, but also take our stories to the world. And on the one hand, also kind of deal with more the IP side of things where, you start to build some value into the company as well, rather than just playing foreign titles, which aren't bad. We love them. But it's trying to support and to grow the local industry.
Yeah, but so that's really interesting. So does that mean is that the first game that you then also are going to develop yourself, or have you been doing that before?
No. This is the first game. So initially when we started, we were like, game development is a 5-year runway. Then the more we kind of got into it, we're like, no, it's a 2-year runway. We have to get this done. Then COVID, we're like, right, let's get it done now. So the book is licensed. We have some visual artists already kind of working on what the look is going to be, and we're building that out. We expect over the next 6 to 9 months to have the beta in stores. So yes, it is our first game. So we're going to also document the journey.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, but yeah, it should be a lot of fun. One of the major obstacles we are facing, and this is the point, and I guess it is the main point, is that the talent pool to be able to design to a certain quality, at
Yeah,
least in the time we've been looking, is sparse. It's very sparse. And it's one of the things that keeps pushing us to say, no, actually, we need to get this right. This ecosystem needs to work. And on the kids side with education as well is, things around studio jams, design jams, game jams are things that we're also introducing in partnership with some education fairs as well, to try to get kids understanding the process of designing and of building as part of this whole, so fun and esports on one side, and also the ability to create and to develop if you're interested on that other side. Yeah, so it's we're learning through the process.
yeah. So I mean, that actually is a good bridge to talk a bit more about your career and your experience. I think because it sounds very entrepreneurial. And like, how did you make the jump to become an entrepreneur? Like, how was that transition? Because before you're working, I think, at advertising agencies, right, in Nigeria and also UK. So when did
Yes.
you decide to start for yourself, and how has that experience been?
So I'll start by saying I think I've always been an entrepreneur. So I
Okay.
grew up in Nigeria. I was in Nigeria till I did my university before moving to the UK for about 6 or 7 years to do postgraduate and then work for a few years. Now, my dad was an engineer, and he was like, he owned his own company. And my mom was a civil servant in the police, and she was she was there for 34 years. So very different kinds of
Yeah.
industries. But for my dad, it was so clear that I had the same entrepreneurial side. For my mom, I learned more resolve and the ability to kind of stick with things to kind of get it done. And one of the things, before I got into uni, I'd run like 3 different companies at micro level. So when I was about 10, I had this photography thing where we'd go to parties with family. I'll take their photos, I'll print it, I'll try to sell it to them. And also just out of, I
Nice.
guess, being nice, they'll kind of pay for it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then after high school, or even in school, actually, I was in a club where you kind of put together like movie nights and stuff because I was in a boarding secondary school, and people would pay to kind of come to see it. And it was one of the things we instituted. So we're kind of making money, not for ourselves, but anyway, for the association or for the body to kind of do more skilled events. Then after that, there's a gap year between kind of secondary school and uni. And that time I got a pool table and, so that's like snooker, but yeah, I know, what pool is, and kind of ran that for about a year. So whilst I haven't played in a long time, if you just give me a few hours, I'll be back to playing very well. So I ran that and made money from that, from the community as well at home. Then in 98, which was about the same time I was at home, 97, 98, started a cyber cafe. So 1997 to 1998, the internet wasn't that, big of a deal. And so had a cyber cafe, running it, kind of training people in things like desktop publishing and all those kind of things, but also they could browse because they couldn't get direct access to the internet and all that. It was still dial-up. I hear the sound of dial-up in my mind as I speak. And so I did all that. But when I got into uni, I think I still ran the cyber cafe for about a year before I then shut it down because I was in school. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I think that's been very clear in my mind. And in going to the UK, it was one of the things I had in mind to always come back to start my own business. And so about in my year 2 in uni, I saw an article in Time magazine that spoke about architecture and advertising. I kind of compared a building in New York and the impact of advertising on revenues just from the side. I guess that's digital out of home now, where you kind of have the billboard and they were earning a lot of money, by having that side separated or kind of being used for advertising. So it got me kind of thinking about advertising. And a lot of people tell me, I don't see the bridge between architecture and advertising. But for me, architecture is about problem solving. That's all it is. It's how do I use design to solve problems. And for me, that's the same, is actually the same set of skills for advertising. So I went into postgraduate, did advertising, and tried to get a job in the UK. That took about 18 to 24 months of knocking, because it's a very competitive industry. Got into advertising in the UK and moved back end of 2008 to start a digital agency. Now, I pitched the idea to start a digital agency to a number of people coming back, but it was still very novel. Nobody wanted to do it. But eventually, one of the kind of older agencies decided to take a gamble on it. So we started the first ever digital agency in Nigeria, and we grew on to become the best and the biggest as well. I ran that for about 6.5 years before moving to Nucleus and then starting this. So since I've moved back anyway, I've been also starting businesses. And so it's quite usual for me to find something I like and do it and try to be successful at it, to build it out. But one of the elements that is very important to me is also, it's not just that it's the thing is viable, it's also that there has to be, now the older I get, there has to be an impact. It's one of the reasons why for us, we didn't just want to get into gaming and esports just purely for the money, and commercial is absolutely important, and I don't judge that at all. I think it's not sustainable otherwise. But for us, it was very important that we got the balance between esports, gaming, and getting into education, because it's a huge deficit for the African continent and the future of jobs for Africa. And if you look at the World Economic Forum point about what skills, top 3 are necessary for the future of jobs, you would find it's things like critical thinking, is creative problem solving, is curiosity, and those are elements actually that you can develop through gaming and esports as well. So that's the journey so far.
Wow. Yeah. So lots of entrepreneurial experience. That's really amazing. So I think then we're back at Kucheza. Like what and we're already getting up to our 30 minutes actually. It's flying by. So what is the big dream? Like, where do you hope it will go in 5-10 years? Like, do you expect that eventually, you'll be sending some people also to the World Championships, or will there be professional gamers in Nigeria? Like, is that part of your goal? Or is that separate? Like, what's the dream? Where do you want to hope it will all go?
So the big dream first is that Kucheza is able to have a network of schools across the continent playing in multiple leagues for different games. That's a big dream of ours, where my kids here, well, they'll no longer be kids at the time, but can play with and there's a league, there's a ranking system, there's a way to know who is a good player. But outside of that also is the ecosystem, is the other roles that support the industry, and getting kids, to kind of self-direct, to kind of be curious, to have agency, to be able to be self-motivated, to achieve a purpose, to work together, and all those elements. For us, our ability to transform and to measure the impact we've made on a generation would be our best, I guess, objective, or what we consider the most successful thing that we could do as Kucheza. On the other side, I would love for Kucheza to own a few esports venues across the continent. That would be really great. We'll love that. I would love for us to have a few IPs, maybe like two IPs for games that we've developed, and esports titles, mobile esports titles that we're also running as part of our leagues as well. So for me, I think that would be success.
So I know I've heard now the first IP is already coming up. So by when the first venue? How many years do you?
To be honest, I don't know. I would hope that we can get this in the next 3 to 4 years. Okay. It's so if I use Nigeria as an example, but the problem again with using the public sector is that there might be no consistency in terms of when that change happens. But if I use the current example of the Minister of Youth and Sports in Nigeria, there's a consciousness for esports. There's a thinking around, we can be a destination city which is also a big deal, of course. You know, post-COVID, we'll know what the new normal, or we'll figure out what the new normal will be, you know. So, and there are a few other cities across the continent that are a bit more open and a bit more forward-thinking to try to get that to happen. So we are trying to plan outside of the public system. And so 3 to 4 years will be ideal for us to at least get our first venue going.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, I look forward to hearing about it, and I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks so much for joining us. Can you, if people want to know more about Kucheza or about you, where's the best place to go? Like a website, on Twitter, or where can they find you?
So they can check out kuchezagaming.com or at Kucheza Gaming on Instagram.
All right.
And Twitter, actually.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Bukola, for joining us. It was great talking to you. And thanks at home or wherever you are if you've been watching. If you like these videos, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll be notified whenever there's a new episode available. And of course, you can also follow us on social media with KaiOS on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. And hopefully see you again for the next episode of Enabling Tomorrow.